Release the Kraken!
Greetings, fellow game designers. Ron here at Lame Duck Studios, and we are continuing on with our BSP overview. Now, last time we made some stairs and this weird cube here, and we're going to convert these into static meshes. So whenever you're done making BSPs, you want to convert them to static meshes. Remember that BSPs are really heavy on your processor, and what you want is to have these sent over to the graphics card instead. So the easiest way to do that is to convert it to a static mesh. So let's say I take these stairs, for example, and I'm happy with them. I can come over, and I'm going to go down to where my brush settings are. And in my brush settings, you'll probably see it like this. At the bottom of brush settings, there's a little tab, a little arrow. If you open that up, you will see that you have the option to create a static mesh. So if I go ahead and click that, it'll turn my current BSP that I have selected, which is this, into a static mesh. Once we do that, it's going to turn this one into a static mesh. It'll also add it to our content browser. I'm going to go ahead and make this, I'll say big stairs. And then there's always a prefix to this, so we should do SM underscore big stairs. And you can do this as capital or lowercase, whichever, just be consistent. I'm going to hit create static mesh. So now, if I select this, you'll see that my brush settings are all gone. I now get physics properties, and I also have this little static mesh bubble with these stairs added to it. But one thing you'll note, if I drag in if I go to basic, and I come down to the sphere, go ahead and drag that in. I'll position this over my stairs here. I'm going to come down to physics, turn physics on. Up here, let's just make sure we're in simulation mode. If you don't see the gear, go ahead and hit the drop down and choose the simulate option. And when you hit simulate, it'll drop the ball. That passed through the stairs because there's no collision. Okay. Now BSPs by their very nature have collision. So if I were to grab a set of BSP stairs and drag them in, move the ball over it, dink, it collides. Don't worry about the widget. Okay. But the moment we turn this into a static mesh, it loses the collision. So what we have to do is add it. Over in the content browser, I'm going to choose the stairs here. Go ahead and double click it. This is going to open the static mesh editing settings here. And here are our stairs. If I come up to the middle, you'll see this little outline that says collision. Hit the drop down. I'm going to choose the simplified collision option. Now what you could do, of course, in Maya is go ahead and add collision boundaries to all this. But that would take forever. Luckily, there is a fancy way of doing complex collisions. So if we come over to the right, let's go down to collision. You can see that under the collision tab, we have collision complexity. Right now it's set to default. I'm going to open that up, and I'm going to say use complex collision as simple. Like that. And now you can see it's generating collision for each of the faces that are on this BSP, or that's on this particular static mesh. Now this is a very expensive thing to do, so don't do this if you don't have to. So the more faces on an object, the more faces are going to be generated for the collision boundary. Okay. But just so you can see it working, now if I were to drop the ball, let me stop simulation. I'll move the ball over the big staircase, hit simulate, and now it works on the stairs. Now for most games, you don't really need to have that much accuracy. So I'm going to go back into this here. Like I said, running all these collision bodies is actually pretty expensive. So instead of doing it this way, if you really don't need this much precision, then we can use a simplified way, which would be just making a slope. So over here under complex, I'm going to set this back to project default. And then I'm going to go over to collision. I'm going to come down to auto generate convex. Now this is probably already open over here, but if it isn't, this is how you get to it. it'll open up our convex hull generation, and we can go ahead and you can type in the amount that you need, hit apply, and it will generate a simplified collision body for this. There we go. And you can see it is a nice slope that covers the stairs. And this should be good enough to climb up and down on. You can also move this. So let's say, you see how it's a little bit high on that bottom step? You can select it by clicking on the outline and just moving it down to match the alignment of your steps. And now if I go back out into the world, you'll see that there's virtually no difference visually between this and the previous one. So if I go back in, hit simulate, it behaves the same. So you don't really see any difference between the two. And this method is cheaper to run than using the complex. So again, if you don't need the complex, don't use it, use the simplified. Okay. Now that also works on holes. So let's say we have a wall. I'm going to take this BSP object. Let's make this into a wall shape. I'm going to go up to, or down rather, to my brush properties. I'll make this into a wall shape. So let's say I have 500 in the X, 20 in the Y. I'll do 500 in the Z. Let's say we have this wonderful wall, and we want to cut a hole in this wall. Well, if I grab a new BSP box and push this through, we go down and select Subtractive, we can cut the hole. One other thing about Subtractive, when you want to subtract an object, it needs to be the new object cutting the old object. If we're to go in reverse, let's say I make this one additive, and this one's older, I make this one subtractive. You'll see that it doesn't cut. So the older object does not cut the newer object. The new object cuts the old object. So there's a draw order. Okay? Well, let's say I want to cut this hole, and I want that to exist on my door, or on my wall. I can select both pieces, so I'll select this, hold Control, and then click the wall. I'm going to go over to my brush settings, convert to static mesh. I'll call this wall with hole. So SM_wall with hole. And there it is, generated nice and good. And of course we need to add collision because this does not have any collision to it. Okay. Remember that setting from previous? We can actually look at the collision boundary. So if I go up to lit and come down to player collision, you will see that this object disappears because it has no collision body. Go back to lit mode here. So let's go ahead and add the collision. I'm going to grab it from the our options here, open it up. Once again, you can use complex collision. You can go up to collision and then set this to use complex. Oops. Let's just show the collision. And you can see it creates a really nice collision boundary around this. And this is a pretty simple door, or a simple wall, I should say. So this is probably not going to be too expensive to run. However, just to kind of get into the practice of it, if you don't need to use complex, use the simplified option. So I'm going to go to project default here. And instead, I'm going to create 3 different collision bodies. So I'm going to go up to collision. You could, of course, do auto convex and have that generate if you wanted to. But just to show you how to do it by hand, I'm going to add a box simplified collision. That's going to create a boundary all the way around it. But this is going to be solid. Okay? That means if I were to try to drop a ball through the hole, it would land and stop. So just to show you that, let me turn this door, or this, I keep calling it a door, turn this wall to the side here. I'm going to move the ball, move tool, move it over. That looks like it'll fall through. Yeah, just make sure it's going to fall through. And if I hit simulate, it doesn't fall through. It doesn't fall through because there is a collision boundary on here. So if I were to go to lit and go to collisions here, player collisions, you can see that this reads as solid. There's no hole. So I go back to lit, turn off my simulation. Make sure you save it because every now and again Unreal likes to crash. If it asks you to save a map, just call it like default map or untitled, whatever you want to call it. I'll call it map. My map. In the event that it crashes, you know. Let's go back into our wall. So to make the extra collision body, I'm going to go ahead and first I'm going to shape this one. I'm going to my front view. So grab that, perspective, go down to front. I lied. Let's go to the left view. There we go. Now it's a bit of a mess in here because of all the different wires, but if you look closely enough and kind of teach your eye how to look at this, the box is here. So from here to there is one box. From here to here is the middle, and then from here around here is the other side. And you can see the green outline is the collision. So I'm going to match this to each point of the body. So I'm going to go ahead and move it center of this piece. I'll bring up my scale tool by hitting R. I'll just scale the red down. It doesn't have to be too precise. You just don't want to get snagged on it. And if you find the snapping is too much, you can always turn the snapping off. So if you come up to the grid here and just click the grid option, you can turn snapping off. And that is actually, this is the movement one. You want the scale. So the little arrow is the scale snap. You can turn that off. And then I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this. I'm going to hold down the Alt key and just drag it. I'm going to put that over this one over here, center it up, and grab my scale tool, just scale it down. Grab my movement tool, hold down the Alt key, I'll drag it to the middle. I'll center this on that section. Scale tool by hitting R, drag that so it expands all the way. It's okay if they overlap a little bit, but I do need to make sure that the hole is open, so I'm going to move it up some, and then I'll use my scale tool, scale it down so it fits this shape. Close enough. So now we have a collision body set. Technically we have 3 collision bodies. And that is going to be a lot cheaper than doing it the other way. And now if we go back into our world and we test our simulation, hey, look at that, it fell through. And if we go to our perspective, or sorry, our lit mode, and change this to player collision, you can see that this no longer reads as solid. We have that hole there. Okay. So that is how to clean up your BSPs and convert them into static meshes, and apply collision if you need it. All right, go ahead and save your work, and I shall see you in the next one. Hey guys, we have done it. We're at 1,000 subscribers, and I have you to thank for it. Thank you, awesome. Misty and I both appreciate it. Maybe I should have called the studio Fuzzy Kitty Productions. That being said, of course, I want to remind you that we are taking a vote for what project I should work on next. Big kind of project for the channel, whether it's going to be a fighting game or puzzle adventure or whatever. Check it out in the link in the description to on the Patreon. Head over there; it's free. Just vote on it. Also, I want to give a quick shout out to Gaurav Barari. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. Gaurav decided to make a wonderful logo as a way of saying thank you for all the work that I do, which is very, very appreciated. Here it is. I think it's beautiful. I love how the beak is the L and the D is the head, and lame duck just kind of pops out, and studio takes a back seat. It makes the cartoony logo a little bit more mature, which is kind of cool. So again, Gaurav, thank you very much. That was very awesome. And stay tuned, keep watching, and I shall see you in the next one.